his name does not matter. It never did. He was born on a hive world in Segmentum Obscurus, the son of a manufacturing worker and a woman who died before he could remember her face. He was conscripted at 16 into the Astra Militarum. He trained for 4 months. He was shipped across the galaxy to a war he did not understand, fighting an enemy he had never seen, for a cause that was explained to him in a single sentence. The Emperor wills it. He fought. He survived when the men beside him did not. He was promoted. He followed every order. He killed everything he was told to kill. He never questioned. He never faltered. He never, not once, gave the Imperium any reason to doubt him. At 31, on a world whose name has since been struck from the Imperial records, he was ordered to hold a trench line against a Chaos advance while his regiment retreated. He held it. The advance was stopped. The retreat succeeded. He died in the trench, alone, unwitnessed. His name was not recorded. He did everything right, and I want you to remember him, because by the end of this, you will understand that what happened to him was not tragedy. It was function. The Imperium makes a promise to every soul born within its borders. Serve, and you will be protected. Believe, and you will be saved. Sacrifice, and your sacrifice will mean something. The propaganda is meticulous. Hive world murals of armored heroes, shrine world sermons about the Emperor's light, recruitment officers who speak with the practiced warmth of men who have never seen the front. The promise is vivid. It is detailed. It is repeated from birth until death, with the insistence of something that cannot afford to be doubted. Purpose, protection, salvation. These are not empty words to the people who receive them. In the darkness of the 41st millennium, surrounded by xenos, by the warp, by mutation and plague and the slow entropy of a civilization 10,000 years past its peak, this promise is the only light available. People hold it. They build their lives around it. They die for it willingly, gratefully, sometimes joyfully. Watch what happens to those who serve perfectly. Watch what happens to those who question. Watch what happens to the faithful, the talented, the loyal. Watch the outcomes. The outcome is always the same. The promise the Imperium makes is real. What it omits is that the promise was never about the individual. It was about the machine. Begin with the greatest examples of loyalty in Imperial history. Begin with the men who gave everything, without reservation, without ambiguity, without the consolation of doubt. Rogol Dorn, Primarch of the Imperial Fists, the man who fortified Terra against Horus's assault, who oversaw the construction of the Emperor's defenses with an obsessive, almost painful devotion to duty, who stood watch at the Emperor's side through the siege, who held when others broke. When it was over, when the Emperor lay dying and the heresy was ended, Dorn drove his hand into a hydraulic press and crushed it because he believed his failure to protect the Emperor demanded physical penance. He spent the next century pursuing a crusade that cost him his fleet and nearly his chapter because he could not stop moving, could not stop fighting, could not stop serving in the only way he understood. He died on a Chaos ship, boarding it alone, cut off from support. His body was never fully recovered. Only his fist, his crushed, rebuilt fist, was brought back. Malcador, the Sigillite, the Emperor's oldest servant, his regent, the man who arguably understood the Emperor's plans more completely than any other living being. When the Emperor needed a soul of impossible purity and strength to sit on the golden throne and hold the Astronomicon while he descended to face Horus, he turned to Malcador. Malcador sat on the throne. He held it. He kept the beacon burning. He spent himself so completely in doing so that when the Emperor returned, broken, dying, and reclaimed the throne, Malcador stepped off as dust. Not a body, not a corpse, dust. The effort had unmade him at the molecular level. Sanguinius, Primarch of the Blood Angels, who bore the Black Rage, a psychic curse embedded in his entire genetic line without telling his brothers the full extent of it because he feared what they would think of his sons, who flew to face Horus alone on the Vengeful Spirit knowing he could not win because it needed to be done, who was broken, his wings torn, his body destroyed by the War Master before the Emperor arrived. His death cracked Horus's armor and left the weakness the Emperor exploited. Without Sanguinius dying first, the Emperor may not have won. His sacrifice was not incidental, it was structural. The system needed him to die in exactly that way. Loyalty does not protect you from the system. Loyalty is how the system consumes you most efficiently. The Imperium does not merely fear what it cannot control. It has built entire institutions whose sole purpose is to destroy it. Every psyker born within Imperial space, every human being touched by the warp, capable of perceiving and sometimes manipulating forces beyond the material, is a potential asset and a certain threat. The system's response is not to develop them carefully, it is to collect them, assess them, and sort them into categories of usefulness and danger. Those judged controllable become sanctioned psychers, astropaths, navigators. Those judged uncontrollable are executed. Those in between, the vast majority, are sent to Terra aboard black ships to feed the Emperor's survival on the Golden Throne. 1,000 psychers every day. Consumed so the beacon stays lit, so the warp can be navigated, so the Imperium can function. This is not cruelty, it is function. Magnus the Red, son of the Emperor, Primarch of the Thousand Suns, the most gifted psyker of the Primarch generation, possibly of human history. He spent his entire existence trying to reconcile his power with his father's vision, studying the warp, seeking to understand it, believing that knowledge was protection rather than corruption. At the Council of Nicaea, the Emperor banned psychic practice within the legions and censured Magnus specifically, not because Magnus was corrupt, but because the system could not accommodate him. His talent exceeded what could be controlled. His research opened paths the Emperor could not afford to leave open. Magnus accepted the ruling. He tried to comply. Then he discovered Horus's corruption and used his psychic power to warn the Emperor directly, the only way he could reach him in time. The warning shattered the Webway project. The Emperor, enraged, sent Lemon Russ to bring Magnus back to Terra in chains. Russ, interpreting his orders through the lens of a warrior rather than a jailer, arrived on Prospero with an army. Magnus had done one forbidden thing in service of the Imperium. The Imperium destroyed his world. Talent in the Imperium is not an asset. It is a liability waiting to be categorized. And the categories are cruder than the people they contain. If loyalty is consumed and talent is destroyed, perhaps faith is different. Perhaps believing completely, surrendering entirely to the Emperor's light, offers some protection from the machine's grinding indifference. It does not. The Age of Apostasy. The 36th Millennium. Goji von Dyer, a man of administrative genius and absolute spiritual certainty, held simultaneously the positions of Ecclesiarch and High Lord of Terra. He was the most powerful individual in the Imperium since the Emperor's internment. And he used that power with the total conviction of a man who believed, genuinely, that he was doing the Emperor's work. He executed millions who questioned him. He redirected Imperial resources to his own projects. He raised his bodyguard, the daughters of the Emperor, later the Sisters of Battle, to a position of sacred inviolability, using their fate as a weapon and their devotion as a shield. The ordinary citizens who worshipped through this period, who prayed in shrines maintained by von Dyer's church, who paid their tithes to priests, who reported to von Dyer's administration, who believed that their faith connected them to the Emperor, were not wrong to believe. Their faith was genuine. The Emperor, in whatever sense he remains capable of it, presumably received it. It protected them from nothing. Van Dier's reign of blood consumed the faithful as efficiently as it consumed the disloyal. Belief is not armor. In the Imperium, belief is leverage. And leverage belongs to whoever holds the institutional mechanism for directing it. When Vandar was finally killed by his own bodyguard after Sebastian Thor reached them, the Imperium did not congratulate the faithful for surviving. It reformed the ecclesiarchy, closed the loopholes, and continued. The dead were canonized, were useful, and forgotten were not. Faith moves the Imperium's people. The Imperium moves the faith. These are not the same direction. Perhaps, then, the exit is refusal. Perhaps those who look at the system clearly, who understand its nature, who reject its terms, find something outside it. Perhaps rebellion is the one path the machine cannot predict or contain. Consider Horus Lupercal, War Master, first among the Primarchs, the Emperor's most beloved son, the inheritor of his great crusade, the man whose approval mattered more to the other Primarchs than almost anything else. Horus, who was shown a vision of the future on Davin, a vision of a galaxy where the Emperor had become a god and his sons were forgotten, and who broke under the weight of what he saw. He rebelled. He chose chaos. He sought something that was not the Imperium, not its grinding demands, not the erasure of his legacy in favor of his father's myth. What he found was the Chaos Gods. And the Chaos Gods are older, deeper, and more patient than anything in the material universe. They did not free Horus. They redirected him. His hatred of the Emperor, his grief, his pride, all of it became fuel. All of it became leverage. The gods who offered him liberation were using him as precisely as the Imperium ever had, toward ends that served them rather than him. He reached the Emperor's side. He was within moments of completing what he had sacrificed, everything to achieve, and then, at the threshold, something in him broke. He saw, at the end, what he had become, what he had let himself become. He stopped fighting, and the Emperor destroyed him, not heroically, not cleanly. The Emperor burned out his soul, erased it from the warp as completely as possible, denying him even the afterlife of a Chaos Champion, because a Horus who survived death would have been more dangerous than a Horus who died. He escaped the Imperium. He fell into something worse. He died at the moment he remembered who he was. The system he fled used his rebellion to justify 10,000 years of increased control. There is no outside. The rebellion against the Imperium leads into the arms of gods, who have been waiting longer than the Imperium has existed. One trap opens into another. The walls are just a different shape. Pull back now. Look at all of it together. Rogol Dorn, Malkador, Sanguinius, Magnus, millions of nameless faithful, Goj von Dyer's victims, Horus himself. Characters who span the full range of human experience inside the Imperium. The loyal, the talented, the devout, the rebellious, the powerful, the powerless. Their stories are different in every detail. Their endings are the same in every essential. They were used, completely, and then they were finished. This is not coincidence. It is not bad luck accumulating across millennia. It is not the Emperor's failure or the High Lord's malice or the Chaos Gods' interference. Though all of these are real factors in individual cases, the pattern persists across all factors, all eras, all circumstances. Which means the pattern is structural. The system requires sacrifice to function, not symbolically, literally. The Golden Throne runs on Psykers. The Great Crusade ran on Primarchs, who are always going to be too powerful to coexist peacefully with the Imperium they built. The Inquisition runs on investigators who know too much to be allowed to retire. The Ecclesiarchy runs on faith that must be periodically purged to remain pure enough to be useful. Every person in this video fed the machine. Their talents, their loyalty, their faith, their rebellion. All of it became fuel. None of them were destroyed because they failed. Several of them were destroyed precisely because they succeeded. It was not cruelty. It was function. The system does not hate you. It does not see you. It processes you. And a system that processes human beings at galactic scale, across 10,000 years, does not produce survivors. It produces records of what was consumed. His name does not matter. It never did. He was born on a hive world. He was conscripted. He fought. He was ordered to hold a trench line while his regiment retreated, and he held it, and the retreat succeeded, and he died alone in the mud of a world whose name has since been struck from imperial records. Here is what happened to him, and why it was inevitable. His regiment was undermanned, 300 men performing the function of 800, because the Administratum's last census of their homeworld was 2 centuries out of date, and the tithe assessment reflected a population that no longer existed. The planet's manufactoria had been underproducing for 60 years. The shortfall was recorded, filed, and never escalated, because the escalation process required 17 countersignatures from departments that had since been reorganized out of existence. He was stationed on that world because an inquisitorial interdiction, long since resolved, had been improperly closed in the files, causing the system to flag the entire subsector as a low-priority redeployment zone. Reinforcements that should have arrived 2 months earlier were rerouted. They never came. He was ordered to hold the trench because the officer who gave the order had no better option. His own request for support had been denied by a general who was following a strategic directive written before the Chaos incursion changed the front lines. No one updated the directive. No one had the authority to update it without convening a council that could not convene because 2 of its required members were 3 systems away, and Vox contact through the local warp disturbance was unreliable. He held the line. He died. His name was not recorded because the unit scribe was among the casualties, and the replacement scribe, arriving 6 weeks later, had no access to the previous records, which had been filed with the wrong administratum sub-office and would not be found for another 112 years, at which point they would be processed, noted, and archived. He did not die because anyone wanted him to die. He did not die because of malice or conspiracy or deliberate cruelty. He died because he was inside a system so vast, so old, so entangled with its own accumulated dysfunction that his survival would have required 1,000 separate things to go right, and only one of them had to go wrong. Across the Imperium at this moment, 1 trillion versions of him are living this same story. Different worlds, different ors, different enemies. The same system, the same ending. He held. The Imperium continued. The Imperium did not notice. This is the hidden system of the Imperium that no one escapes. Not the loyal, not the faithful, not the powerful, not the powerful, not the talented, not even those who burn it all down and run. The machine continues. The names do not. And somewhere, in a trench on a world whose name has already been forgotten, someone else is holding the line.